Hey guys, welcome to another pre-release guide video for the newest and upcoming set of Magic the Gathering called Dominaria. We are all in on this pre-release guide, so this is the second video. We will be talking today about the best creatures, common and uncommon, in each color so that you are well prepared for your pre-release tournaments, whether that is a sealed, a draft, two-headed giant. These are the creatures you're going to want to be looking for, building your deck outright so that you can win games and win prizes, prize packs. Some shops do gift cards and things like that. But at the end of the day, we're here to help you win more games. Before we get into all the goodness that is coming up, I do want to let you know that our video yesterday was uncommon gold legendary creatures, so you can go ahead and click on the link there. That'll take you to that video. The basic premise is the creatures that you get in the dual colors set, the uncommon level, those will kind of shape what you're going to be building in your deck whenever you're playing in sealed and draft and two-headed giant and things like that. So we outline all 10 of those cards so that you have a well-prepared background for each of those archetypes, and you can decide for yourself which one is the greatest, which one's the worst, and how you like to play so you can be more familiar with that. So go ahead and click on that to go there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the best common and uncommon creatures for Dominaria. We're going to start with the commons in white. We've got Sarah Disciple at a 1/1 for 2 mana, which vanilla test is terrible. But it does have a couple different abilities here that give you a little bit of extra oomph in your back pocket here. So you've got flying, you've got first strike, and then you also have a pumpable effect. Whenever you cast a historic spell, it gets +1/+1 till on a turn. So on turn 3, you're going to be attacking in for at least 1, or if you've got a couple historic spells to drop down, maybe 2, maybe 3 damage. This is a flyer with first strike, so it's got the evasion, and then it also has first strike on top of that. So the threat of activation threat of a combat trick is really going to be important in this regards, as far as tossing and combat with this creature. Next up, we've got the Deviant Trapper. This is 2 generic 1 white for a 3/2 at common. Human Archer. When you cast a historic spell, tap target creature opponent controls. So, if you've got the Disciple and you've got the Trapper, you're obviously going to want to try and cast those historic spells pre-combat. But that'll give your Disciple +1/+1, and then you can also tap down something with the Trapper and things like that. So a lot of evasion there. Tap down their best thing and go to town. Plus 3/2 for 3 mana isn't the worst. That 2 defense is a little rocky, but we'll talk here in a minute about how to give this guy a little bit of evasion on the following turn. So next up, we've got Aven Sentry. It's a simple 3/2 flyer for 4 mana. It's it's a little on the rocky side as far as the defense goes, kind of like what we were talking about with the Trapper. Turn 4, you really don't want your turn 4 drop, your 4 drop to be taken out by a 2 drop. But at the end of the day, it's got flying. You're gonna play it because these games are won on the battlefield. So the next card, to kind of go along with the Trapper, what we've kind of alluded to here is, this is the Pegasus Courser. It's a 1/3 with flying for 3 mana, 2 generic and 1 white, and it says whenever it attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until end turn. So this is a great way that you can target your early game. You can target creatures that your bombs to give them evasion. Anything you really need to do to kind of hone in a couple extra points of damage there. And maybe with the Trapper in play, you're able to cast a historic spell, tap down one of their flyers, and then fly over the rest of their defenses. But at the end of the day, these 4 are some of the best best commons in white that you're going to be using in your early game. Next up, we have the uncommons. We've got a couple early, couple late, and a couple flyers. So let's take a look here. So we've got Bard, Steward of Argive. It's 2 white, 2 generic for a 2/4 with vigilance. And then it's also got a second ability. Creatures you control creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 colorless mana for each of those creatures. So this is going to slow the game way down. This is going to make it so your opponent can't either has to choose between casting spells or attacking you, or planeswalker you control. So, I've heard this kicked around a little bit as far as making the game go long and things like that, but that's not necessarily the case. Like you're trying to, it's got a big butt. So 2/4 is definitely something that you can, hang your hat on as far as a 4-drop is concerned. Especially with the vigilance. So it's going to be able to take some hits in combat. However, being able to force your opponent to choose between attacking or casting spells is going to give you the advantage as far as tempo is concerned later as every turn continues on and on and on. I mean, if you think about, casting a spell on turn 1 and then not being able to cast a spell again until turn 3 and you're attacking on turn 2 in between there, you're only attacking every other turn or casting spells every other turn. If you can put this in an aggro deck, that would be phenomenal because you're pumping out creatures left, right, and center while your opponent's sitting there like, well, if I attack, I might as well cast a spell because they've got huge defenses, so it really kind of limits their ability there. So that's a legendary creature at uncommon. Next up, we've got Sarah Angel, the classic, 4/4 flyer with vigilance for 5 mana. This isn't a great card in draft. It's much more efficient in sealed, only because the games tend to go a little bit longer in sealed because of the randomization of your deck. But Sarah Angel, is good either way. It's a good finisher. It's got flying. It has vigilance. It's a 4/4. You're gonna play it no matter what. It's gonna be in your deck, and you're not gonna cut it. So, great card. Next up, we've got Knight of Grace. It's 2/2 for 1 white, 1 generic. It's a human knight at uncommon with first strike. It's got hexproof from black, and then it also gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. So this gets better if you're playing a white-black deck. It's even better if your opponent's playing black because of the hexproof, but it also is really good because it's also good in Two-Headed Giant because your player next to you might be able to help you out as far as playing black. So that tends to happen quite a bit where, player 1 will be 2 colors and player 2 will be a separate 2 colors. So you can play, a white-green deck and have your Knight of Grace and your cohort could be playing, black-red, and you could benefit from that. So you're always getting that +1/+0. So 3/2 for 2 mana, very good. First strike, even better. Hexproof is just icing on the cake. Dauntless Bodyguards next. This is the brand new Savannah Lions, 1 white for a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you choose another creature you control. So on turn 1, if you play this, you can't choose him. You can't choose your partners in Two-Headed Giant. Has to be one you control. And then you can sacrifice the Dauntless Bodyguard to the chosen creature gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is great, late game, early game, whenever, drop it on turn 1 and start beating down on turn 2. If you draw this late game, it's kind of like an insurance policy for your big creature, so they have to deal with this creature first. Obviously, 1 damage isn't a huge, barrier to entry, but it's still something else that they have to, plan B. They gotta go through plan A first and then get to plan B before they can get to your target. So all good cards, all uncommon. You're gonna be opening up 6 packs of cards, so you're gonna get you're gonna see some of these cards. So just be ready for those. So let's move on to blue. Academy Drake is next. This is kind of a strictly better Windrake, right? Windrake is a 2/2 for 2 mana or 3 mana. Right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive. Thinking. But this is, Swindrake's got flying, and then it also has a kicker cost. The kicker cost is a little pricey, but 4 mana gets you 2 +1/+1 counters, right? So you're paying a total of 7 mana for a 4/4 flyer in blue. Not too bad, especially when you can drop it on turn 3 and have yourself a nice little beater in the air, get the game going. If you draw it late, then a 4/4 flyer isn't anything to scuff at. If you draw into it and your hand's empty, you're not casting anything anyway. You might as well go for it. Go big or go home, right? Voldarian Arcanist is next. It's a 1/3 for 1 blue, 1 generic Merfolk Wizard. You can tap it to add a colorless. Spend this mana only to cast instants or sorcery spells. It's a wizard. There's a shell there for a wizard deck. It's the only problem is trying to find the right balance between wizards and spells, instants, and sorceries that you can be beneficial. Some of the wizards care about other wizards, so you want to make sure that you're meeting those needs as well. So I'm thinking, a deck, a 40 card deck that has, about 8 to 9 wizards is right where you want to be. I think we were talking earlier or yesterday about, you want to have 2 wizards, 1 spell is kind of like the ratio that you're kind of going for. Next up, we've got Cloud Reader Sphinx. It's 1 blue, 4 generic for a 3/4 flyer, and it gets you 2 scry 2 when it enters the battlefield. It's a little on the pricey side, but it gets you that scry. So late game, you can really kind of shape what your next couple draws are going to be. Maybe you don't need those land drops as much, so you put those to the bottom and get to your spells a little bit quicker. So this is a good kind of topper card as far as the blue deck's concerned. And then Artificer's Assistant is 1 blue for 1/1 flyer. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you scry 1. So this is kind of one of those cards where you play it, you get a couple points of damage in, and then in the late game when you're mid to late game when you're casting those historic spells, you're getting just a little bit extra value on top of each spell. Now, had this just been a 1/1 flyer for 1 blue mana, I don't think I would play it, only because the only way to shape that and make that stronger is by adding auras and combat tricks. The scrying ability makes it that much stronger. So just be cautious. Obviously, if you don't have any historic spells, this gets significantly worse. If you want to replace, pump spells, if maybe you're playing green and you want to play blue-green, there's a ton of good pump spells in green. There's also quite a few in red. So you've kind of got a little bit of extra cushion there. If you're looking for auras, you're more leaning towards white, and that you want to kind of stay away from auras. You don't want to get 2 for 1, especially early game. That's a huge tempo loss, but still a solid card, worth every mana that you're putting into it. Next up, we have our only uncommon that I feel is worth it creature. We've got Merfolk Trickster. It's 2 blue for a 2/2 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, it loses all abilities until end of turn. So this is an extremely versatile card, right? So you can use this to flash in before attacks are declared, tap down their best guy. You can use this after attacks have been declared, and they're attacking with their best dude. And you're like, okay, well I can turn their 5/5, with indestructible down to a 5/5 without indestructible, and I can block it with my 6/6. Or whatever, or my 5/5 and we'll trade, or whatever the case may be. Or let's say you've got a burn spell in your hand, and for you blue-red players in there. There's a couple different tricks you can play there. You flash it in, you take care of one creature, you block another creature. It's just wild, right? You can even use it on offense, right? So like, let's say they have some type of flash creature that they play, to block your creature, right? You can use that ability to save your creature, in some fashion or other. Maybe it's a death touch, maybe it's, whatever it could possibly be. The other interesting kind of side note is, let's see here, creature and opponent. So it's got to be a creature and opponent control. So you can't use it on your stuff, which is unfortunate. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of fun because this card is so versatile as far as when you want to play it and what kind of benefits you can get from it. It's really kind of up to you. And at the very least, it's a 2/2 for 2. So, and it's a Merfolk Wizard, so it's in, it's a wizard. It's in that same type of tribal deck that you're looking for. It's Merfolk, which in standard is going to be phenomenal. But we are talking pre-release, sealed, and draft. Moving on, we are in black. Windgrace Acolytes is a 3/2, and it costs 4 generic and 1 black. It's a cat warrior. Yes, I'm just now realizing this. This is a cat warrior in black, which is interesting. It's got flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you put the top 3 cards from your library into your graveyard, and you gain 3 life. It's kind of a weird combination there. Black doesn't have a lot of flyers. This one is definitely a little bit on the softer side, especially at 5 mana. Be cautious when you're playing this. Make sure that you're having some type of graveyard shenanigans there. If this is the only flyer that you open, you're gonna want to play it, right? Hopefully, if it's the only flyer that you open, you're playing something else. Like if this is the only flyer you have in like the colors that you're looking at, I would probably look at other colors. Flying is probably one of the most underrated abilities in Magic the Gathering Sealed and Limited, followed very closely by Lifelink. So be very, very cautious about playing this card. I still think it can be powerful. Gaining the 3 extra life is not a minor thing. But if you've got some graveyard shenanigans, and we will talk about those here in just a moment, you're going to have some fun with this card. So Thaliad Omnivore is next. It's 1 black, 3 generic for a 3/3. You pay 1, sacrifice another creature. It gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it was a Saproling that was sacrificed this way, you gain 2 life. And we talked about yesterday in the video make sure you go back and watch that. There is some really sick combos with these Thaliads and these Sapling tokens and these fungus. They're in green and in black. There's some really good combos at the common and uncommon level. So be very, very cognizant of what you're opening. And this is a 3/3 for 4 mana, which isn't too bad. Vanilla test fails by far, but it's got a pumpable effect. It doesn't require to tap. It gains you life, and it gets to be a 5/5. 5/5 for 4 mana is much stronger. The threat of activation is always a strong thing, and it puts you over that 3 and 4 point defense. That's kind of scary that you could 2 for 1 your opponent, although you are sacrificing a creature, a sapling. But at the end of the day, you could be doing worse. Stronghold Confessor is next. It's a 1/1 for 1 black. It's got Menace and Kicker for 3 generic mana. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters. So 3/3 with Menace for 4 mana, not too bad. Early game is great. You're going to get in at least probably 2 hits of damage with it, not too bad, and then you could block something with it. So, get in. If you can get 2 to 3 points of damage, then this thing has done its job. If you can augment it in any way with equipment or something, or combat trick to get an extra couple points in, then this is the way to go. Black is really has some really good options as far as removal spells are concerned. So being able to control the board and play this is very, very strong. Depending on your hand, you might wait to play this till turn 4. If you can control the battlefield. If you can't control the battlefield, go ahead and drop this early and start beating down. Drudge Sentinel is next. It's 2/1 for 1 black and 2 generic. It's a skeleton warrior. You can pay 3, tap it, and it gains indestructible till end of turn. This is a great wall. You can, once you hit, your 4th turn after you drop this, being able to block anything, tap it, pay 3, and give it indestructible, it's fantastic. Especially if you don't have anything to cast. The problem becomes is once you hit turn 4, now you're tapping 3 land every block, every other turn to keep your opponent at bay. But at the end of the day, late game, when you're getting into like the heavier hitters, the 5/5s, the 6/6, this thing can really take advantage of those, and really force your opponent to answer it on your turn, right? To make sure that they can get through their attacks. So next up, let's see here. Next up, we have our uncommons in black. We have Knight of Malice. This is the black version of the white Knight of Glory we just talked about. It's 1 black, 1 generic for 2/2 first striker with hexproof from white, and then it gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a white permanent. This is cut and paste for the white as it is with the black, so if you're in these colors, you're going to play it like every time. This is a fantastic card. Even if you are in a single player game and you're not playing white, this is still a really good card. 2/2 for 2 black, or 2/2 for 2 with first strike, fantastic. And the off chance that you're playing a white mage, even better. Whisperer is next. It's a 2/2 for 4 mana. Sacrifice 2 creatures. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So you remember the card we were just talking about, where you need to have some type of graveyard shenanigans, where you're putting the top 3 cards of your graveyard, of your library, into your graveyard. This is what I'm talking about. This is how you're going to be able to utilize those cards that you're accidentally or incidentally putting into the graveyard. There's a couple other spells in here, and actually Urgos is the next one we're going to talk about. It's a 4/3 for 6 mana. When it enters the battlefield, or excuse me, it's got flying, and then when it attacks and deals damage to any player, that player discards a card at random. If that player can't, you draw a card. So, getting back those creatures that you're discarding, this is the best way to do it. It's the most effective way. And then also we've got Thaliad Soothsayer. This is a 2/3 for 4 mana. You can pay 2, sacrifice a creature, and draw a card. Keep in mind he can sacrifice himself, which is nice. So in the late game, he can replace himself very quickly. He can kind of chump block and then sacrifice, draw a card, and do all those fun things. At the end of the day, it's a pretty good card. There's some really good. It's a good sack outlet, and there's, like I said, the Thaliads that create the fungus and the saprolings. This is another key piece to that deck. So again, all uncommon cards, all great to play. Moving on to red, we've got a bunch of red cards here. So Bloodstone Goblin is next. It's a 2/2 for 2 mana. Whenever you cast a spell, if that spell is kicked, Bloodstone Goblin gets +1/+1 and gains menace until end of turn. Again, great card, especially if you've got a couple kick spells. You're looking primarily in red and in green, although there are a couple in blue, and there's a very small amount in black. So there is a viable option in all the color pairs, but you're primarily looking in red and green. Skirt Prospector's next, to 1/1 for 1 red. You can sacrifice a goblin, add a red mana. So this turns all your chump blockers and all your creatures that would your goblins that would just be blocking and dying into mana producers. So and on top of that, you can cast some pretty good stuff like turn 3, turn 4, and get kind of ramp into those 5 and 6 mana spells. Next up, we've got Rampaging Cyclops. Is a 4/4 for 4 mana. It gets -2, -0 as long as 2 or more creatures are blocking it. So it definitely gets worse when you're not controlling the board. But 4/4 for 4 is really, really strong, especially if you've got like the instants and sorceries to deal with opposing creatures, right? Getting that -2, -0 is kind of a big hitter, right? So they do have to block it. So if you're able to, make sure that you're, timing your instance correctly before combat, before blocks are declared, that is the time to destroy creatures right then and there, so they don't have an opportunity because it's blocked, right? So you don't want to be in that kind of pickle there. Keldon Rider is next. It's a 4/3 for 4 mana, which is great. And it enters battlefield. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. You get rid of your worst card in your hand, and hopefully you get something better. On top of that, you got a 4/3. Not too shabby. Next up, we've got a couple other cards. The Firefist Adept it's an interesting card. It kind of goes in that wizard deck. You got to make sure, like I said, 2/1 wizards. This is only going to work if you've got, I don't know, if you've got like 8 or 9 wizards in your deck, that's kind of where you want to be to make this viable, right? When it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage where to target creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of wizards you control. So it's definitely it's at least dealing 1 damage, right? It's 3/3. It enters the battlefield. It checks for wizards. It's a wizard. It at least deals 1 damage. If you can have three on the battlefield already, and you're dropping a 3/3 and you're dealing 4 damage, heck, even dealing 2 damage is probably sufficient enough. Paying 2 mana for 2 damage, 1 mana for 2 damage, you're looking at 3/3 for 4. It could be better. So you want to make sure you've rounded out your wizard in a good pattern, and topped it off with this spell. Goblin War Chief is next. It's 1 generic 2 red for a 2/2. Goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and goblins you control have haste. So this is a nice little, it's not quite a lord in that sense, but it makes your goblins cheaper and makes them faster. Skizit is next. We've talked about this one at length. I love this card. I think it's great. It's got Kicker 1. It's a 5/3 elemental for 4 mana, and it's got Trample and Haste. And if you destroy it at the end of your end step, or at the beginning of your end step, if it wasn't kicked, so you can pay 5 and keep it around, or you can destroy it, one or the other. Still 5 mana. Instant, 5 damage because it's got Trample and Haste. That's so good. And then there's the little card combo here that I wanted to talk about, because I didn't want you guys to get trapped into this, because both of these cards by themselves are ho-hum, but at being uncommon and opening 6 packs of cards, you're gonna get, there's possibility that you're going to get both of them or duplicates. Obviously, if you get a Volderg, getting multiples of him isn't nearly as good because he's legendary. But they both benefit the same way, and that's by having equipments and auras attached to them, right? So the Flamekeeper, or Keeper of the Flame, is a little bit stronger because you don't have to attack with him, right? So he deals damage by adding auras and equipment to him, and then you, at the beginning of your attack step, you get 3/1 red elementals with haste and trample, right? So they can't be chump blocked. And then the exile those tokens at the beginning and end step. That's a whole nother point. But he doesn't have to attack, right? Whereas with the Champion of the Flame, on the other hand, this guy does have to attack. So he's a little bit more vulnerable at 1/1. He already has trample, which is fantastic. But he gets +2/+2, making him a 3/3. It's great that he gets that defense bump. I'm shocked that they gave you that defense block, or this defense stack. I would assume like something like this would have been a 1/2 or a 1/3, and then he would have got +2/+0 for each aura. But at any rate, that extra bump in defense is fantastic. If you open up 2 of these, you're kind of in business, right? If you open up 3, that's a sign. Start gathering your auras, start gathering your equipment, and make a badass deck. Make sure you have a plan B, though, as well, because you don't want to get blown out, but make sure you got a plan B. Don't be fooled, though. If you open up 1 of these, it is not a sign to go into auras. It is not a sign, okay? This is a huge missed opportunity if you take this and say, oh my gosh, I opened a Champion of Flame, I'm totally doing auras. We're doing it. We're going to get there. No, don't do yourself like that. Next up, we've got green. We've got the first up is Mammoth Spider. It's a 3/5 with reach for 5 mana. This is the only creature that has reach at common and uncommon. So do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor. Play 1 in your main deck, and then if you got a sideboard 1 in game 2, do it, because there's a lot of flying in this in these alternate colors. You've got a couple spells and we'll talk about those going forward, that can help you deal with those, and spells that grant reach, but this is one that you're going to want to keep in your back pocket for sure. Baloth Gorger is next. It's a 4/4 for 4 mana. It's got kicker for 4. If it gets kicked, it's a 7/7, right? Common, play it. You're going to play it. You're going to love it. 4/4 for 4 is outstanding. 8 mana for a 7/7, that's not as outstanding, but it's still going to be a beatdown stick in your sealed deck. So you'll play 2 or 3 of them because it's a 4/4. So this is your mid range for sure. It's got mid range written all over it, and if you draw one late, then it could be your win condition. Llanowar Scout is next. It's a 2 mana 1/3. Basically, it empties lands out of your hand onto the battlefield, and you're good to go, right? So if you're going to try and ramp into something, there's a couple spells, we talked about them yesterday, that allow you to search your deck for land cards, or look at the top couple cards of your deck and put lands into your hand. This just helps you put those lands into play. And kind of ramp into your higher stuff. Llanowar Elves, classic card. Glad it's back. 1/1 for 1. On turn 2, you got 3 mana. You're going to play something awesome. On turn 3, you're going to play your Gorger, and you're going to feel really good about it. So that is the uncommons in green. The commons in green. Now moving to the uncommons. Untamed Kavu is the best, and I mean the best card to put in your green deck. You will play as many as you open, and you will be happy about it. So it's 2/2 for 2 mana. It's got kicker of 3. It has vigilance and trample, and when it's kicked, you put 3+1/+1 counters on it. That's right, 3 mana, 3+1/+1 counters, getting it all the way up to a 5/5, 4/5 with trample and vigilance. Just wow. I mean, this is the Sarah Angel of green, right? Slightly better, slightly worse. It's a little bit better because it got better stats. A little worse because it didn't got flying. But that trample ability, though, on turn 2, it's a good ability, especially if you can pump it up on turn 3. So, next up. And don't forget, you've got some spells that, we'll be getting to here in a second, like this Druid. You've got Llanowar Elves and a couple other ways to kind of get you to that magical 5 number before turn 5. So keep that in mind. Thorn Elemental's next. This artwork is disgusting. I bet this card was going to look great in foil. But it's a 7/7 for 7, and you may have Thorn Elemental assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So if they block with their 1/1, you could say, nope, you're going to go ahead and take all 7 of that. And the Thorn Elemental will take 1 damage, but, So, great card, great finisher. Clear out some of their bigger things to risk the combat tricks and things like that. Grun, the Lonely King, is next. This is just a straight-up win condition on its own, right? So, it's 6 mana for a 5/5. Not that great, right? It's got kicker 3. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters. So, Untamed Kavu on steroids. But that's not the only thing. So, you don't have to kick this, right? You can pay 6 and get your 5/5. And with your 5/5, you can attack. And if you attack with just this Ape Warrior, you double its power and toughness to a 10/10. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say. You paid 6 for a 10/10. Granted, you have to attack alone, which, it can be rough. But if you can pair this with black and clear out their defense, or pair this with blue and give it flying, nothing worse than a 10/10 flying ape, right? But if you're in the late game and you feel like paying, 9 mana, 7 + 3. No, you're paying 10 mana. Paying 10 mana. And you're getting a 10/10, right? And then when it attacks by itself, it's a 20/20. Yeah. That's a thing. Give that 20/28 flying and attack in. Turn it sideways. Do it to it. So, again, you're not going to play multiples of these. It's a great win condition. you know, it's a legendary creature, so you got to be careful, right? So, Elfhelm Druid's a 0/2 for 2 mana. It taps for one green, and it also taps for 2 green if you want to cast kick spells, right? So if you want to go ahead and just, for your Lonely King over here, rather than paying 10 mana, you can tap your Druid here and shave 2 green off of that. Not too bad, right? Not too bad at all. All right, let's move on. Last slide here. We got a couple artifacts here. Nothing real big, but there's definitely something here, right? There's definitely these can fit in any deck, right? Aggro decks, you're probably not going to play the Perig Wanderer because it costs so much, right? But it's a good topper, like 6 mana, 5/5 with trample. That is not too bad. 5 defense. It's a great blocker. It attacks in great. If you can, either augment it, or if you can, give it some type of combat trick to, get some extra points in there, fantastic. Now the wall, on the other hand, this 06 wall that costs 4 is one of those cards that if you're playing with a bunch of wizards, for instance, right? You're playing with a bunch of 2/2s, 2/1s, 1/3s. It may be a 3/3 here or there. That have, some of them have some pumpable effects, like when you cast a sorcery, all your wizards get so much extra bump, or whatever the case may be. Chances are, when you're playing wizards, you're also playing some instants that give you some bumping, some bump to your attack and defense. This, on the other hand, will help save you from having to lose those creatures that you built up, right? Because wizards, the wizard deck is going to require you to. What does it require you? It's going to require you to have more wizards on the battlefield. That's what that deck is going to do. That's what that deck needs to do to survive, to win. You don't want to be blocking with those wizards and losing them. Ergo, the wall. This is the wall to save your wizards, right? You put this thing in front of a lot of creatures in this set, and it's going to survive. And even if it doesn't survive, you can pay 2 and give it indestructible. There, it will survive. So it's not a flashy card. It's not super fun. It's not one of those, oh my god, I opened up this wall and I'm going to win the game. No, this is literally getting you the defenses up that you need to protect your wizards, so that you can continue casting instants and sorceries to do those shenanigans that are written on those magical spells. So again, it's not going to be, windmill slam, but on that turn 4, when they, they're getting ready to drop their 5-drop or their 6-drop or whatever, and you're like, I got this, I'm under control, right? This is definitely one of those that will bring you up to equal with your opponent if you're from going from behind. So, all right, guys. That is our video for today. Best creatures in the uncommon and common slot for each color, and a couple of the artifacts there. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought. If you agree, disagree, did I miss something? Did I overhype something? What do you think overall about the video, about the set? I want to hear it, so make sure you leave it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel. We'll be doing Mana Drain here in just a little bit, and I think we're going to play some Magic Arena. I think we're going to crack some packs and try and play this new beta. So, but we do go live every Monday at twitch.tv/72DPI online. So go ahead and watch the streams live there every Monday, along with our other content, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we will see you guys in the next video. Have a great evening.